The Russian NazBol party is an anomaly. By uniting the far left and far right, it sort of de facto ended the Russian Civil War that began in 1917, and its founders are an LSD-consuming anarchist poet from Siberia, a man with a book banned on Amazon, and the person in seeking the American dream became so disgusted by it, he turned fascist. And most ironically, its symbol looks like a blend of the Nazi flag with the USSR flag, but actually comes from the movie Sid and Nancy, when Sid Vicious is wearing it on a t-shirt. The NazBols' genesis is in the ensuing entropy of the dissolution of the Soviet Union. On December the 25th, or Christmas Day, 1991, the Soviet Union was replaced by the Russian Federation, and the old Russian Empire was compartmentalized into now independent states. Its first president was a construction mogul called Boris Yeltsin. He would apply the shock doctrine, which is rapid privatization of state assets and radical capitalism, to the Russian state, to theoretically deliver one swift blow to fix its badly managed economy, a sort of Machiavellian escapade, one fatal strike being better than 1,000 cuts. He done this to align the new Russian state with the Washington Consensus, which is one of free trade and liberalized markets, which is the dogma of the West, in which Yeltsin wanted to emulate. The Soviet Union turned to Russia, and actually existing socialism turned to capitalism overnight. The movie Brat gives a vivid depiction of the great life of Russia in this era, an era defined by roaming gangs, encroaching Western culture, crime, destitution, poverty, and a struggle unimaginable for anyone raised in the Occidental sphere. In deregulating the market and financial industries, Yeltsin would transfer power to oligarchs. Oligarchs were big business owners who de facto owned the Russian state. These people were folk like Chelsea FC owner Roman Abramovich. Yeltsin, once heralded as a reformer and good buddy of Bill Clinton, corrupted the state more so than it was. The oligarchs managed to entrench corruption in Russia and surrounding areas, as the rule of law was weak, means of taxation even weaker, buying out politicians was vogue, and the ability to pull out of the country and bring their wealth with them was omnipresent. This is aptly called gangster capitalism. Anger at the new system was understandable, as Russia went from being the second superpower to being a precarious state, in a socio-economic misery. Corruption became so entrenched that it became a case of it's not what you know, it's who you know. A veneer of democracy was given to a corporate autocracy that held the country hostage. The new Russian Federation became the den of iniquity. If you were poor, tough. If you were mega rich, God knows you done nothing for your wealth. And this ushered in kleptocracy. All of this understandably pissed off everyone who was not rich. The honeymoon with capitalism was short-lived at best, and the golden rule of politics was not considered, that every action begets a reaction. In 1993, a very unstable year for Russia, Alexandr Dugin, Eduard Limonov and Yegor Letov coalesced to create a movement called the National Bolshevik Party, a synthesis of the far right and the far left, combining nationalism with Bolshevism in a reaction to the economic shock therapy, and it quickly became a catalyst for the anger felt by most Russians, as it was more of a protest movement than any coherent ideological party. But who are these very important people? Yegor Letov is somewhat like Kurt Cobain, but from Siberia. In the late 80s he was in a band called Gражданская, Оборона, famous for its song Eternal Spring. For those who listen to Russian doomer music, you likely heard it. It was a punk band and a good one at that. Letov went on to maybe, more like likely, have a relationship with another famous Russian musician, Янка, furthering his punk status. He spent some time in a transient state, consuming copious amounts of cannabis and LSD. He was a radically transgressive individual who made some great music and ultimately hated the USSR. He was very dismayed at everything pretty much, and he joined the National Bolshevik movement as the countercultural icon that gave the party the transgressive zeal of a punk rebellion. At heart, Letov was an anarchist, as he said in a later interview with MTV. But in the setting of shock doctrine Russia, he became the far-left element of the National Bolshevik Party. Eduard Limonov, who is known to anyone who recently watched the latest Adam Curtis documentary, is a Russian writer who started off his life as a Trotskyist. He self-exiled himself to the United States, where he came under FBI surveillance for his politics. As well as that, he was active in publishing radical literature, in which the famous writer of Jordan Peterson's Bible, The Gulag Archipelago, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, would describe him as an insect who wrote porn. Limonov was pretty poor in America, and the American dream turned into a nightmare pretty quick. A situation made worse when he got a job as a butler for a millionaire, which sickened him so much he said of the USA, "It is a damned outhouse bereft of spirit or purpose on the outskirts of civilization." Limonov left the USA to return to Europe, settling in Paris. Then the Yugoslavian war kicked off and he went to meet Bosnian Serbian nationalist Radovan Karadzic, the person responsible for the genocide of the Bosnians of Srebrenica. Limonov was enamored by this nationalism. He then moved back to Russia with a messianic complex to revert the nation back to a nationalist conservatism. To do this, he set up the National Bolshevik Party. Alexandr Dugin was the ideological thought leader of this party. He is today famous for being a sage of the far right and having his book Foundations of Geopolitics, which proposed dividing the US along racial lines and breaking the UK from the EU, banned off Amazon. For Dugin, NazBolism's ideology was to be a blend of Bolshevism, the ideology of the Russian revolutionaries of 1917, and of esoteric fascism of René Guénon, the Muslim convert French fascist philosopher of the 1930s. Yes, you heard that right, in old Europe, fascists converted to Islam. Dugin, like most traditionalists or perennialists, hates liberalism, which Yeltsin was a proponent of. Dugin, even to this day, sees the ideology of liberalism as Western imperialism and a Trojan horse for sublimating liberal American values onto people. The National Bolshevik Party quickly became a countercultural movement against the neoliberal hegemony of shock therapy Russia. The radical party combined young anarchists, Stalinists, conservative philosophers, Orthodox Christian ideologues, and fascists into one movement, which is why, to the surprise of nobody, it was not successful. Its dissolution was inevitable. Letov left the party first to continue his career as a musician. Russia eventually turned away from Western liberalism to nationalism. With this change, Alexandr Dugin left the NazBols to pursue a career in politics with his Eurasian ideology, heavily based on Mackinder's World Island, fascist philosopher Ivan Ilin's Civilizational Russia, and a complete rejection of liberalism. Today he is regarded as Putin's Rasputin, Rasputin being the crazy monk who was a good friend of the Tsars by offering them spiritual guidance. Limonov also attempted to get in the new nationalist politics of the state but was rejected. Ironically, he became an opponent of the state as it started turning more conservative and nationalist. With this, the party being a countercultural party started turning more culturally liberal, and Limonov started returning to his initial belief in anarchism. You could say he's a grifter. The NazBols became extreme to say the least. Limonov had this grand plan to destroy the Russian state. It involved Kazakhstan. The plan was to invade Kazakhstan, set up a breakaway region called Novorossiya. Novorossiya under Limonov was to spread separatism like wildfire and destroy the Russian Federation. And he was deadly serious. He was going to do this, but got caught red-handed, charged with illegal arms possession, and sent to jail. Whilst in jail, the NazBols staged some seriously daring protests and engaged in some audacious spectacle, occupying the United Russia HQ. This is akin to the Proud Boys occupying Capitol Hill or something. Limonov got out of prison and formed the party Other Russia, as his NazBol party was banned in 2007. In 2008, the NazBol's first member, Yegor Letov, passed away. In 2020, Limonov passed away, and today the only remnant of the original Russian NazBols is Alexandr Dugin, who is still very famous and influential. He is, to the far right, what Reagan was to neoconservatism. So that's the quick history of the NazBols. I greatly appreciate you watching this video, and if you liked this or even didn't like this video, do consider subscribing and liking the video.
обесцвеченных глазах мутные стекла, на обмороженной земле белые камни. Кидай свой бисер перед сдернутым рылом, кидай пустые кошельки на дорогу, кидай монеты в полосатые кепки, свои песни в распростертую пропасть. В моем углу засохший хлеб и тараканы, в моей дыре цветные краски и голос, в моей крови песок мешается с грязью, а на матрасе позапрошлые руки. А за дверями роют ямы для деревьев, стреляют детки из рогатки по кошкам, а кошки плачут и кричат во все горло. Кошки падают в пустые колодцы, а ты кидай свои слова в мою прорубь, ты кидай свои ножи в мои двери, свой горох кидай, как